This is The Process Shot. I'm Michael. I'm stuck in a weak conspiracy, and I've seen Don't Worry, Darling, a newish psychological thriller from director Olivia Wilde. Set in some kind of pre-planned 1950s community, we follow Alice Chambers, loving housewife to Jack, whose complacent daily life of homemaking, shopping, sunbathing, and gossip is challenged when a neighbor begins to question the purpose of the community. While everybody has outcast her for such talk, Alice begins to experience her own doubts when she begins to witness unusual acts on her own, from a plane crashing in the desert to hallucinations right there at home. Undergoing a generally increasing amount of paranoia over time, while Jack and others seem to be thriving, if not ignorant. Eventually, tensions boil over, and when she learns the truth of the matter, it's really kind of anticlimactic when you think about it. Yeah, there's a pretty sizable issue with this movie, and it's the last 10 or 15 minutes, just after the main twist of the story is revealed, and it has to wrap things up pretty quickly. It more or less foregoes the more conspiratorial tone set up throughout the rest of the movie in favor of a faster-paced thriller, one which ends just as suddenly as it began, and ultimately feels as if the filmmakers had no idea how to end the story naturally. Then again, the rest of the story before all of that is not exactly anything completely clear or even consistent. It likes to put more stock into the psychological aspect of Alice and her perspective of events, trying to set up a conflict between whether or not what she's going through is indicative of psychosis or if it's real and part of an ongoing cover-up. The actual happenings that occur are interesting and definitely designed that way, but it's also as if the movie was written around making these weird things happen. And once they ran out of ideas, they had to force in the rest of the story and its drama. The movie ends up spending the rest of its time on other characters, trying to gaslight Alice into admitting she's crazy, though by this point it's not at all an ambiguous situation for the audience, and ends up more of an annoyance for them, as everybody, Alice included, seems to manufacture conflict just for the sake of having it. I will say that it ultimately wants to tackle a few themes on conformity and gender roles within this society, but it's all handled with very little tact and even less subtlety. The movie's production and technical elements also seem a bit manufactured just for the sake of being in there. Sure, it looks pretty enough, especially in the set design that emulates 1950s aesthetics pretty well, but it doesn't really do much for the story, given its thematic focus and the universality of its treatment, rather than using the setting to touch upon the decade itself more directly. Cinematography also seems more focused on the actual visual elements of the setting and how it presents this warped society, rather than anything more directly cinematic or in favor of the storytelling. Editing is also pretty limited, with one montage being the closest the movie comes to stylistic expression. There are a few moments here and there of psychological confusion being cut together, but they appear out of context and almost like cobbled bits of stock footage meant to introduce a scare or two for the audience. The same idea applies to audio and sound design, if you can call it that, and not just incidental sounds or music which barely adds anything to the film at all. There really isn't too much in the way of a unique style in this film, save for a few framing and cutting choices. The rest is focused on the story and characters, but the former drags on and loses steam over time, and the latter all end up being uninteresting and are rarely sympathetic. Overall, it seems as though the movie wants to be a cross between a classic sort of psychological thriller and a discussion of modern concepts that subvert the standards of a time gone by, but the end result is far more messy than it is provoking. Don't worry, darling. Olivia Wilde, 2022. 1.5 stars. I wouldn't recommend seeing the movie yourself. That's it for me. If you liked this review, leave a like. If you didn't, leave a comment. Subscribe to the channel for more reviews. Honestly, I feel like the twist probably could have been able to tie the themes and the story together well, but the actual ending is what ruins it. I'd even say that it sours just about every good idea that was introduced in the film. There weren't even that many to begin with.